Are you ready for a very delicious cinnamony treat? Because if you are going to want to make this sourdough cinnamon swirl loaf. Now, the good news is this is easy to make. The bad news is it is even easier to eat. So don't say I didn't warn you. First, you're going to want to make sure you have active starter. If you don't worry. You can add some baking powder or baking soda to make sure this rises. In my case, I fed my starter to the bottom rubber band, and then it rose. It doubled in size to this second rubber band, but I forgot to put it in the fridge so it would stay in place, and then it fell almost back to where it originally started, back to the first rubber band. So I'm just going to add a little baking powder to get this to rise quickly, but if you have time, you can let it rise without the baking powder. Rise times will vary depending on how cold or warm it is in your house. Bye. Start off with 1 cup of active starter, and if it's not active, we'll add baking powder later. Add 1 cup of brown sugar. If you don't have brown sugar, you can substitute it with white sugar. 1 stick of butter, either softened or melted, which comes out to about 1/2 cup to 3/4 of a cup. I'm using melted butter. You could also substitute with melted coconut oil. Now add about a tablespoon of vanilla extract. Add 2 eggs. Now mix that up.
Excuse me there, honey bunny. No cold water? What kind of establishment is this place?
Now add 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour. Now add 1/4 of a cup of wheat flour. If you don't want to add the wheat flour, you can just use all-purpose flour, or you can even use bread flour instead of all-purpose. Add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You can add 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, or you can skip it if you're going to let it rise on its own with active starter. Now mix everything together. Except I forgot 2 ingredients. We need to add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon and 1/2 cup of chopped walnuts. Now you can either get ready to bake it after this, or even just let it sit and ferment for a few hours, just for some of the fermentation benefits.
Hi vlog. Today we're gonna be making some cinnamon rolls. It's like one of those ASMR videos.
Oh my goodness. Let it sit for a few hours.
Yummy.
After I let mine sit for a few hours, which is completely optional, now it's time to put it in the pan. I just scrunch some parchment paper and then flatten it back out. This will make it so much easier to actually put it in the pan to make it fit. Now cut it in half and layer the first part on the bottom, and then you'll just kind of spread it out with your fingers and kind of poke a little bit of holes in there, because then we're going to add some cinnamon and brown sugar, and then that can get into the little poked holes. So add a cup of brown sugar and 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. Mix that up, and we'll use that in a moment. This part's optional, but definitely recommended. Chop a few pieces of butter and put those on top. Now grab that cinnamon brown sugar mixture and use about half of that on this first layer. Now add the second part of your dough on top and spread that out, and then you'll also poke holes in that. Now add the remaining half of the cinnamon brown sugar mixture to the top of your loaf. If you're not planning on using any baking powder, then you would let this rise again before placing it in the oven. Now place it in a preheated oven at 350 and bake it for about an hour, checking it at about 50 minutes. You can use a toothpick or a knife to poke the middle and make sure it's fully cooked. Now you can eat it like this, or you can make an icing to drizzle on top while it's cooling. Now using a sifter, sift out 1/2 cup of powdered sugar. Add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Optionally, you can add 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. Now add between 1 and 2 tablespoons of water, depending on how thick or thin you want the icing. I've used 1.5 tablespoons of water. Now pour it on top and let it cool for a little bit more and enjoy. Here's what the cinnamon icing looks like. And here's what the regular icing looks like with no cinnamon. Thanks for watching.